I always thought I had a perfect life. My name is Daniel, and I live in a small town where everybody knows each other. I'm a software developer, working from home most days, which gave me the flexibility to be present for my wife, Clara. She was a kindergarten teacher, a nurturing spirit who loved children and brought joy to their little lives. We had been married for 5 years, and our relationship was built on trust, laughter, and shared dreams of starting a family. But then there was him, the toy store owner, Mark. His store, Whimsy Wonders, was a staple in our town, a place where children's laughter echoed through the aisles filled with colorful toys and games. Mark was charming, a man who could easily win over parents with his magnetic personality and his ability to connect with children. I had always felt a twinge of jealousy when Clara would speak fondly of him, praising his creativity and the way he engaged the kids in his store. It was innocent, I told myself, just a friendly rapport between a teacher and a local business owner. The first sign of trouble came when Clara started spending more time at the toy store. She would often come home late, her cheeks flushed with excitement as she recounted the latest stories of the children's joy at discovering new toys. I didn't think much of it at first. After all, it was her job to foster that happiness. But as the weeks passed, I noticed subtle changes in her demeanor. She was more distracted, her laughter less frequent, and she seemed to be hiding her phone from me. One evening, I decided to surprise her with a dinner date at our favorite restaurant. I put in the effort, dressing up and cooking her favorite meal, but when she walked through the door, I could tell something was off. The sparkle in her eyes was dimmed and her smile didn't reach her lips. "Hey, how was your day?" I asked, trying to break the ice. "Oh, it was fine," she replied, avoiding my gaze. As we sat down to eat, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something she wasn't telling me. I felt it in my gut, a gnawing discomfort that grew stronger each day. I began to scrutinize her every move. The late-night phone calls, the texts she quickly dismissed when I walked into the room, and the way she seemed more excited to go to work than to come home to me. The turning point came on a rainy Saturday afternoon. I had planned to spend the day working on a project at home, but Clara had mentioned she was heading to the toy store to help Mark set up a new display. As I sat at my desk, I felt an overwhelming urge to follow her. I didn't trust my instincts, but they were screaming at me to uncover the truth. I drove to the store, my heart racing as I parked a few blocks away. The rain poured down and I watched as families entered and exited the store, their laughter contrasting sharply with the storm brewing inside me. When I finally mustered the courage to step inside, I was hit with a wave of nostalgia. The smell of fresh paint, the bright colors, the sounds of children playing. But my heart sank as I turned the corner and saw them together. Clara was laughing, her head thrown back, as Mark leaned in closer, whispering something that made her face light up. In that moment, I felt like I had been punched in the gut. The world around me faded, and all I could see was the betrayal unfolding before my eyes. It was as if someone had ripped my heart out and replaced it with a cold, hollow space. I turned on my heel and left the store, my mind racing with disbelief and anger. How could she do this to me? The woman I loved, the woman I had built a life with, was betraying me with a man who sold toys for a living. As I drove home, my thoughts spiraled into a dark abyss of rage and heartbreak. I felt lost, betrayed, and utterly alone. I parked in our driveway, staring at the house we had built together, now feeling like a prison. I knew I had to confront her, but the thought of her explanations only fueled my anger. I needed to process what I had seen, and I needed to come up with a plan. Revenge was not something I had ever considered, but at that moment, it felt like the only way to regain control of my shattered life. As I sat in the car, rain pelting the windshield, I made a decision. I would not just confront Clara, I would ensure that Mark felt the consequences of his actions. He had taken something from me, and I would make sure he paid for it. The confrontation happened that night, and it was as explosive as I had anticipated. Clara walked in, her laughter fatting the moment she saw my expression. I could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating. I had rehearsed what I wanted to say 100 times in my head, but when the moment came, the words tumbled out in a chaotic rush. "Clara, we need to talk. I said, my voice steady but laced with an undercurrent of fury. "What's wrong?" she asked, her brow furrowing in concern. "I saw you with him," I spat, the accusation hanging heavily between us. Her face paled, and for a moment I thought she might deny it. But then I saw the flicker of guilt in her eyes and the truth spilled out like poison. "Daniel, I can explain." "Explain what?" I interrupted, my heart racing as I paced the living room. "That you've been sleeping with the owner of the toy store, that you've been lying to my face while I trusted you completely." "Please just let me talk," she pleaded, her voice trembling. I stopped, staring at her, trying to find the woman I had loved so fiercely. "Talk. What could you possibly say that would justify this?" She took a deep breath, her shoulders slumping as she sank onto the couch. "It was a mistake. It started as friendship, and I didn't mean for it to go that far. I swear I love you, Daniel." "Love?" I scoffed, the word tasting bitter on my tongue. "How can you say that when you've betrayed me? You think love can survive this?" Tears streamed down her face, and for a moment I felt a flicker of sympathy. But it was quickly overshadowed by the heat of my anger and the betrayal that coursed through my veins. I couldn't bear to look at her anymore, so I turned away, my mind racing with thoughts of revenge. After that night, everything changed. Clara moved into the guest room while I remained in a haze of pain and fury. I was gripped by a desire for revenge, and it consumed me. I spent sleepless nights plotting how to make Mark pay for his betrayal. I knew I had to hit him where it hurt, his business. The first step was gathering information about him. I spent hours online, researching his toy store, reading reviews, and learning about his suppliers. The more I dug, the more I realized that Mark's store relied heavily on its reputation and community support. The town adored him. He was a beloved figure. But I knew that perception could be shattered, and I was determined to do just that. I began by creating fake accounts on social media, posing as disgruntled customers. It was easy to fabricate stories about poor service and subpar products. I flooded local community forums with negative reviews, planting seeds of doubt in the minds of potential customers. I wanted to turn the town against him, to make them question the integrity of Whimsy Wonders. As the days turned into weeks, I watched the effects of my actions unfold. The store's once bustling foot traffic began to dwindle, and I could see the panic in Mark's eyes whenever I passed by. I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction as I observed him desperately trying to salvage his reputation, holding promotions and events that only seemed to further highlight his decline. But with each small victory, I also felt a gnawing emptiness within me. Revenge was supposed to be cathartic, but instead it left me feeling hollow. I had become a shadow of my former self, consumed by anger and bitterness. I couldn't escape the memories of Clara's laughter, the warmth of her embrace, and the life we had built together. My relationship with her became even more strained. The guilt of what I was doing weighed heavily on my conscience. I would catch Clara watching me with a mixture of fear and sorrow, her eyes searching for the man she once loved. But I was no longer that man. I was a stranger, a vengeful ghost haunting the remnants of our marriage. One night, as I sat in the dim light of our living room, I received a message from one of my fake accounts. It was a response to one of the reviews I had posted, and it read, "I heard rumors about the owner. There's something fishy going on behind the scenes at that store." My heart raced. I had crossed a line I hadn't anticipated. I was no longer just targeting Mark's business. I was delving into the murky waters of character assassination. The thrill of revenge was intoxicating, but the moral implications were starting to weigh on me. I had become the very thing I despised, a man willing to destroy another for his own pain. As I lay awake that night, I realized I had to make a choice. I could either continue down this dark path, letting revenge consume me, or I could confront the pain and betrayal head-on. But a small, dark voice in my mind urged me to keep going, to finish what I had started. I was on the brink of something sinister, and I couldn't turn back now. The lines between right and wrong were blurring, and I was determined to see this through to the end. The days turned into a blur of calculated moves and sleepless nights. I was entrenched in a world of deceit, and the thrill of my revenge had morphed into an obsession. Each negative review I posted felt like a small victory, yet the euphoria was fleeting. I was constantly reminded of Clara's tear-streaked face, the sound of her sobs echoing in my mind. But I shook it off. I had made my choice. I spent hours on social media, creating fake profiles under various aliases. I crafted elaborate stories about Mark's supposed unethical business practices, claiming he sold defective toys and had been caught using unsafe materials. I knew how to manipulate the narrative, and it was surprisingly easy to sway the opinions of the town. The more I wrote, the more I felt in control. But with every keystroke, I also felt an internal war waging within me. Part of me relished the power I held over Mark's fate, while another part of me grappled with the morality of my actions. I was sinking deeper into a darkness I had never known. I had become the villain in my own story, and I couldn't help but wonder if revenge was truly worth the cost. One evening, I decided to take things a step further. I had heard from a friend that the town was planning a community event at the park, a fair that would attract families and children. It was the perfect opportunity to strike at Mark's heart. If I could ruin his reputation in front of the entire community, it would send a message he wouldn't soon forget. I started to brainstorm how I could sabotage his presence at the fair. My mind raced with ideas, each one more sinister than the last. I could anonymously call the health department, claiming he was using unsafe toys, or maybe I could spread rumors about him being involved in a scandal. The possibilities were endless, and I was intoxicated by the thought of his downfall. As the fair drew closer, I began to put my plan into action. I reached out to a few local parents, posing as a concerned citizen. I shared my fabricated stories about Mark, planting seeds of doubt in their minds. I could see the concern in their eyes as they listened, and it filled me with a sense of power. I was manipulating them, controlling the narrative, and it felt exhilarating. But beneath the exhilaration lay a growing sense of dread. I was not just ruining Mark's career, I was also tearing apart the fabric of our community. The thought gnawed at me, but I quickly pushed it aside. I had to keep my focus. This was about more than just revenge, it was about reclaiming my dignity. The day of the fair arrived, and I could feel the tension in the air. The park was alive with laughter and joy, children running around with balloons and cotton candy, their faces painted with bright colors. I felt like a ghost, lurking in the shadows, watching as Mark set up his booth. He was smiling, engaging with parents and children, and for a moment I felt a sharp pang of envy. How could he be so carefree? Didn't he realize the storm that was about to hit him? As the event progressed, I watched as families flocked to his booth. Mark was a natural, charming everyone with his charisma. My heart raced as I prepared to execute my plan. I had a friend, Sarah, who was a local journalist. I knew she had a reputation for being thorough in her reporting, and I decided to use that to my advantage. I approached her, feigning concern about the safety of toys at Mark's store. "Have you heard the rumors?" I asked, lowering my voice conspiratorially. "I've heard some troubling things about his products." Her eyes narrowed with interest. "What kind of things?" I leaned in, lowering my voice even further. "I've heard that some toys have been recalled for safety violations. I think it's worth looking into, don't you?" I could see the wheels turning in her mind as she processed my words. I knew Sarah would dig deeper, and soon enough, the story would spread like wildfire. I felt a rush of adrenaline as I walked away, knowing I had planted the seeds of chaos. As the afternoon wore on, I felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety. I watched as Sarah approached Mark, and my heart raced. I couldn't hear their conversation, but I could see the worry etched across his face. I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction at the sight of his growing anxiety. But then I noticed Clara in the crowd, her eyes scanning the fairgrounds. She looked lost, almost as if she was searching for me. I felt a wave of guilt wash over me as I watched her. She was innocent in all of this, yet I was dragging her down with me. I quickly turned away, pushing the guilt aside. I couldn't let her distract me. As the sun began to set, I noticed Mark's booth emptying. Parents were leaving, whispers of concern filling the air. I knew my plan was working. I felt a sick sense of triumph as I watched him attempt to salvage the situation, but it was clear that the damage had been done. That night I received a message from Sarah. I'm writing a piece on Mark's toy store. There are some serious concerns about safety. I'd love to get your thoughts. My heart raced as I read her words. I had set the wheels in motion, and there was no turning back now. But as I lay in bed that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing myself in this web of lies and deceit. I had become a puppet master, pulling strings to ruin another man's life. And for what? To reclaim a sense of power I had lost. I was at a crossroads, and I knew I had to make a choice. I could either continue down this dark path or confront the reality of my actions. But the darkness was intoxicating, and I felt myself being pulled deeper into its grip. The days following the affair were a whirlwind. News of Mark's supposed safety violations spread like wildfire through the community, fueled by my carefully crafted lies and Sarah's sensational reporting. I watched as his once thriving toy store began to crumble. The parking lot, usually bustling with families, became eerily quiet. It felt like I was orchestrating a symphony of destruction, each note resonating with the thrill of revenge. But as I reveled in my success, I also felt the shadows closing in. The guilt was becoming a constant companion, gnawing at the edges of my mind. I had convinced myself that Mark deserved this, that he was the villain in my story. But the reality was more complex. I was the one who had chosen to enact this revenge, and with every negative review, every whispered rumor, I was losing a part of myself. One evening, as I sat at my desk, I received a message from Clara. "Can we talk?" It read. My heart sank. I had avoided confronting her for too long, hiding behind my revenge while she bore the weight of my betrayal. I knew I had to face her, but the thought filled me with dread. What could I possibly say to her? We met at a coffee shop the next day. Clara looked fragile, her eyes red from crying. I felt a pang of sorrow as I took in her appearance. The woman I had loved so deeply looked broken, and I realized that my actions had not only hurt Mark but had also devastated her. "Daniel," she began, her voice trembling. "I don't even know where to start. I'm so sorry for what I did. I never meant to hurt you." I felt a rush of anger bubble to the surface. "You never meant to hurt me. You slept with another man, Clara. How can you say that?" She looked down, shame washing over her features. "I know, and I've been trying to figure out why I did it. It was a moment of weakness, and I regret it every day. But what you're doing to Mark, it's not right. You're destroying him." Her words struck a chord deep within me. I had convinced myself that I was justified, that Mark deserved everything I was doing to him. But hearing Clara speak so earnestly made me question my motivations. "He took you from me," I replied, my voice low and filled with pain. "He stole my trust, my happiness." "I know, but this isn't the way to handle it," she pleaded. "You're becoming someone I don't recognize. I can't stand by and watch you hurt him like this." Her words hung in the air like a heavy fog. I had become a monster in my quest for revenge, and it was suffocating me. I realized that I was not only punishing Mark, I was also punishing myself. The darkness I had embraced was consuming me whole, and I was losing sight of who I was. "I don't want to be that person," I admitted, my voice cracking. "But I feel so lost, Clara. I don't know how to move past this." She reached across the table, her hand trembling as she placed it on mine. "We can figure this out together, but you have to stop this vendetta. It's tearing us apart, and it's tearing you apart too." In that moment, I felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps I could find a way to heal, to reclaim the man I had once been. But the path to redemption wouldn't be easy. I had to confront the mess I had made and take responsibility for my actions, not just toward Mark but toward Clara as well. As we left the coffee shop, I felt the weight of my decision pressing down on me. I knew I had to make amends, but the thought of facing Mark filled me with anxiety. What would I even say to him? How could I possibly undo the damage I had caused? That night, I lay in bed, tossing and turning as I wrestled with my thoughts. I knew I had to go to the toy store and face Mark. I had to come clean about my actions and take responsibility for the havoc I had wreaked. It wouldn't be easy, but I couldn't continue down this path of destruction. The next morning, I found myself standing outside Whimsy Wonders, my heart pounding in my chest. The store looked different now, its windows dimmed, the vibrant colors dulled by the shadows of doubt. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay ahead. I pushed open the door and stepped inside. The familiar sounds of laughter and joy were absent. Instead, the store felt heavy with despair. Mark stood behind the counter, his shoulders slumped, and his eyes were filled with a mix of confusion and anger as he recognized me. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice cold and distant. "I need to talk to you," I replied, my heart racing. "I owe you an apology." He crossed his arms, his expression hardening. "You think an apology can fix what you've done?" I swallowed hard, the weight of my guilt pressing down on me. "No, I know it can't. But I need you to understand that I let my anger consume me. I've done terrible things, and I'm here to take responsibility for them." Mark's eyes narrowed, suspicion etched across his face. "Why should I believe you? You've been spreading lies about me, ruining my business." "I know," I admitted, my voice trembling. "And I'm sorry. I let my pain drive me to do horrible things. I thought it would make me feel better, but it only made things worse. I want to make it right." He studied me for a long moment, and I could see the conflict in his eyes. "What do you want from me?" "I want to help you. I'll do whatever it takes to fix the damage I've caused. I'll come clean about everything, about the lies, the fake reviews. I'll help you rebuild your reputation." Mark's expression softened slightly, but the hurt was still there. "You think it's that easy? You think you can just walk in here and make everything better?" "No, I know it's not easy, but I need to try. For Clara, for you, and for myself. I want to stop this cycle of revenge and start making amends." He looked away, his gaze drifting toward the empty aisles of his store. "It's not just about the business, you know. You've affected my whole life." "I understand that now," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I was so blinded by rage that I didn't see the consequences of my actions. I'm truly sorry." For a moment, silence hung between us, thick with tension. I could feel the weight of my past choices pressing down on my shoulders. But in that moment of vulnerability, I realized I had taken the first step toward redemption. Mark sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "It's going to take a lot to rebuild trust, you know. I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't expect you to, but I'm willing to do the work. I want to help you, and I want to make things right." As I spoke those words, I felt a shift within me. I was no longer the vengeful husband seeking to destroy. I was a man confronting his mistakes, ready to face the consequences of his actions. But the road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges. I had to confront not just Mark, but also my own demons, the anger, the betrayal, and the pain that had driven me to this point. I took a deep breath, ready to face whatever came next. The days that followed my confrontation with Mark were filled with a mix of apprehension and determination. I had embarked on a path of redemption, but I knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. I had to confront not only the fallout of my actions, but also the fragile state of my relationship with Clara. After speaking with Mark, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, but it was quickly replaced by a new burden, the responsibility to right my wrongs. I reached out to Sarah, the journalist, and explained everything. I told her how I had manipulated the narrative, how I had deceived the community for my own selfish reasons. To my surprise, she agreed to write a follow-up piece, one that would set the record straight about Mark's store and my involvement in the smear campaign. "People deserve to know the truth," she said over the phone, her voice steady. "I'll make sure to highlight your apology and your efforts to make amends, but you need to be prepared for the backlash." "I understand," I replied, my heart racing. "I know I've created a mess, and I'm ready to face the consequences." As Sarah worked on the article, I turned my attention to Mark. I reached out to him again, offering to help him with the store. I wanted to show him that I was serious about making things right. He hesitated at first, but eventually he agreed to meet me at the store. When I arrived, I found him sorting through the remnants of unsold toys. Atmosphere was heavy, and the once vibrant store felt like a ghost of its former self. "Thanks for coming," he said, his tone cautious. "Thanks for giving me a chance," I replied, stepping into the store. "I want to help however I can." We spent the afternoon reorganizing the shelves and cleaning up the store. As we worked side by side, I could feel the tension slowly dissipating. We talked about the challenges he faced, the financial strain that had resulted from my actions, and the impact it had on his life. I listened intently, absorbing every word, and I felt a sense of camaraderie growing between us. I never wanted to be in this position. he admitted, wiping sweat from his brow. "I just wanted to run a good business and make kids happy. Now it feels like I'm fighting an uphill battle." "I understand," I said, feeling the weight of guilt settle back in. "And I want to help you fight that battle. I'll do whatever it takes." As the days turned into weeks, my commitment to helping Mark grew stronger. I worked with him to launch a community event aimed at restoring his reputation. We organized a family day at the store, complete with games, giveaways, and a charity drive. I reached out to local parents, inviting them to come and experience the store firsthand. "Let show them what Whimsy Wonders is really about," I said, enthusiasm bubbling within me. Mark was hesitant at first, but as we planned the event together, I could see his spirit beginning to lift. We collaborated on promotional materials, and I even helped him set up social media accounts to reach a wider audience. Slowly but surely, the community began to respond positively. Meanwhile, Sarah's article was published, detailing my journey from revenge to redemption. She wrote about the importance of accountability and the power of forgiveness. It was a cathartic experience, seeing my wrongs laid bare and the community rallying around Mark once again. But as I read the article, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. I had hurt people, and while I was trying to make amends, I knew that forgiveness wouldn't come easily. Clara's lingering sadness weighed heavily on my heart. I had dragged her through this mess, and I needed to address our relationship head-on. One evening, after a long day at the store, I finally mustered the courage to sit down with Clara. We met at a small diner, the air thick with unspoken words. She looked at me with a mixture of hope and apprehension. "Daniel," she began, her voice soft, "I've seen the changes in you and I want to believe that you're on the right path, but I need to know if you're truly committed to making things right, not just with Mark but with us." "I am," I replied earnestly, my heart racing. "I want to rebuild our relationship. I know I've hurt you deeply and I can't change the past, but I want to make things better. I want to be the man you fell in love with." Tears welled in her eyes as she listened. "I want that too, but it's going to take time. You've been through a lot and I've been through a lot. We need to heal together." "I understand," I said, reaching across the table to take her hand. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Just tell me how I can support you." We talked for hours, slowly peeling back the layers of hurt and betrayal that had built up between us. Clara shared her feelings of abandonment during my quest for revenge, and I listened, absorbing each word. I realized that while I had been focused on my own pain, I had neglected hers. As we left the diner, I felt a sense of hope. We were still a long way from healing, but we were taking the first steps together. I knew I had to continue supporting Mark and helping him rebuild his store, but I also had to prioritize my relationship with Clara. The community event at Whimsy Wonders was a success, and I felt a sense of pride as families flooded into the store. Laughter and joy filled the air, drowning out the memories of betrayal. Mark and I worked together seamlessly, and I could see the relief on his face as the community began to embrace him again. But even amidst the celebration, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was still on shaky ground. I had made progress, but I knew that forgiveness was a journey, not a destination. I had to keep working, keep striving to be better, not just for Mark or Clara, but for myself. As the event came to a close, I stood outside the store watching families leave with smiles on their faces. I felt a sense of fulfillment, but the shadows of my past still lingered. I had a long way to go, and I was ready to face whatever came next. The weeks following the community event at Whimsy Wonders were a testament to the power of redemption and the resilience of the human spirit. Mark's toy store began to flourish once more, and the community rallied around him, embracing the joy he brought to their children. I felt a sense of pride in my role in helping him rebuild, but I also knew that the road to redemption was fraught with challenges. As Mark's business regained its footing, I found myself reflecting on my own journey. The darkness of revenge still lingered in my mind, but it was slowly being replaced by a newfound sense of purpose. I was no longer the vengeful husband seeking to destroy another man. I was a man striving to heal the wounds I had inflicted, not just on Mark, but also on Clara. Clara and I had made significant strides in rebuilding our relationship. We spent more time together exploring the things that had initially brought us joy. We went for long walks, shared meals, and had deep conversations about our hopes and fears. I could see the flicker of hope returning in her eyes, and it filled me with determination to continue on this path of healing. One evening, as we sat on the couch watching a movie, Clara turned to me with a serious expression. "Daniel, I've been thinking about everything that's happened. I know we've made progress, but I want to talk about your feelings. How do you feel about Mark now?" I sighed, the question weighing heavily on my heart. "It's complicated. I still feel anger for what he did, but I realize that my actions were driven by my own pain. I don't want to be that person anymore. I want to move forward, not just for us, but for him too." Clara nodded, her expression softening. "I think that's important. Healing means letting go of the anger and finding a way to forgive, even if it takes time." Her words struck a chord within me. I had been so focused on my own journey of redemption that I hadn't truly considered Mark's perspective. I had hurt him, and while I was working to rebuild his reputation, I still needed to confront the raw emotions I felt toward him. That weekend, I decided to reach out to Mark again. I wanted to have an honest conversation, to express my regrets and find a way to move forward. I arranged to meet him at the store, my heart racing as I approached the entrance. "Hey Daniel," he greeted me, his expression cautious but not unkind. "What's up?" "Thanks for meeting with me," I said, taking a deep breath. "I wanted to talk about everything that's happened. I know I've caused you a lot of pain, and I want to apologize for my actions." Mark crossed his arms, studying me with a mix of skepticism and curiosity. "I appreciate that, but it doesn't change what you did." "I know," I replied, my voice steady, "but I want to make things right. I've been working hard to help rebuild your reputation, and I want you to know that I'm genuinely sorry for the damage I caused." He nodded slowly, the tension in the air palpable. "It's hard to forgive, you know. You turned my life upside down." "I understand," I said, my heart heavy with regret. "But I want to move forward, not just for myself, but for you too. I hope we can find a way to coexist in this community. I want to support you, and I want to see Whimsy Wonders thrive again." Mark's expression softened slightly, and I could see the conflict within him. "It's going to take time. Trust doesn't come easily, especially after everything that happened." "I'm willing to put in the effort," I replied earnestly. "I know I can't change the past, but I'm committed to being a better person moving forward." After a long pause, Mark sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I appreciate your honesty. It's a start, at least. Let's see how it goes." As we parted ways, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I knew that rebuilding trust would take time, but I was willing to do the work. I had taken responsibility for my actions, and now it was up to Mark to decide how he wanted to move forward. In the weeks that followed, I continued to support Mark and Clara. I helped organize more community events at Whimsy Wonders, fostering a sense of unity and joy among families. I watched as Mark regained his footing, his passion for his business reigniting. The laughter of children once again filled the store, and it filled me with a sense of fulfillment. But the journey wasn't without its challenges. Clara and I still faced moments of doubt and insecurity. There were times when the shadows of my past crept back in, and I had to remind myself of the progress we had made. Healing was a process, and it required patience and understanding from both of us. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Clara turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "I'm proud of you, Daniel. You've come a long way." "Thank you," I replied, my heart swelling with gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without your support. I know I hurt you deeply, and I'm committed to earning back your trust." She smiled softly, her eyes shining with warmth. "I can see the changes in you. It's like you've awakened to a new perspective. I want us to continue this journey together." As the sun dipped below the horizon, I felt a renewed sense of hope. I had faced my demons, confronted my pain, and taken steps to make amends. The road to redemption was ongoing, but I was no longer walking it alone. I had learned that love was not just about the good times. It was also about navigating the storms together. Clara and I were rebuilding our foundation, brick by brick, and I was determined to create a stronger, more resilient relationship. As I looked out at the fading light, I knew that the journey ahead would be filled with challenges, but I was ready to face them. The darkness of revenge had given way to the light of forgiveness, and I was committed to embracing that light for the rest of my life. In that moment, I realized that love, healing, and redemption were not just destinations but journeys. And I was grateful to be on that journey with Clara by my side.